So far, we've discussed what's an object, how to create a class and an object, how to create methods, how to use the init method, and what are the two different types of variables. Today, we will go over the three types of methods in Python. Let us see what they are: instance methods, class methods, and static methods. Instance methods are the most common methods you'll use. As the name refers, instance methods or object methods are simply methods that works on objects. For example, let's create a class student, and I'm gonna define the special init method, which takes self as parameter, which is the object itself, and a student also has a name and last name. Now I'm going to define the instance variables. Instance variables are variables defined inside the init method. So self.name is the instance variable that will store the value of the parameter name. Self.lastName is the instance variable that will store the value of the last name parameter. Now let me go ahead and create my object. And inside the constructor, I will mention the name, which is John, and Smith, which is the last name. Now if you're asking why I didn't pass the object as parameter first, that's because when you launch your code, the init method is executed for each object you have in your program. So because I only have one object, the init method will be executed, and indirectly, while behind the scenes, Python will take my object student1 and put it as an argument for the self parameter. Now let's create a method that allows me to change the name of the object. So def, and I'm going to say change name, and I'm going to take self as parameter and new name. So I'm going to say self.name, which is the variable that stores the name of the object. I'm going to override it and put the new name. Now this is a instance method because you're using the self keyword, so you're basically working with objects. Let us see, or first of all, let us create another method, def, and I'm going to name it return name. It will just return for me the name of the object. I'm going to say self, and I'm going to say return self.name. Simple method. Let us say right here, first of all, how do we call a method? Well, all you need to do is mention the object name dot method name, change name. Oh, okay, I did wrong here. Change name, and inside I'll mention the new name. Let's say David. So Python indirectly passes the student1 as argument for the self parameter and David as argument for the new name parameter. Simple. Now I'm going to print, and I'm going to use the return, or first I'm going to use an f string, say name equal to, and inside these curly brackets, I'm going to say return, or student1 dot return name. That's how we call a method. Let me launch my program, run Python file, and as you can see, the new name is David. As you can see, I've created three new objects. Let me delete these two lines, and I'm going to add in the init method a new parameter, which is test score, and I'm going down there and create a instance variable called test score, which will store the value of the parameter test score. Okay, now I'm going to create an instance method, which I will call it average. It will find for me the average of all of these notes, so 82, 90, and 75. Let's find their average. So I'm going to say self, s2 and s3. S2 and S3 means student 2 and student 3. I'll explain what I'm doing here later on. I'm going to say sum equal to self.testscore plus s2.testscore, and we'll see why I'm doing this. Same goes for s3.testscore. And to find the average, I'll say avj equal to, well, because I have 3 students, I'll say sum divided by 3 and return the average. And let us call this method. I'm going to say student1, or let me say print f string avj equal to, I'm going to say student1 dot average. I'm going to mention student2 and student3 as parameters, or arguments, for the parameters. So let us first launch this code and see if it works correctly. And it works correctly. If you want to take off the floating point number, make sure to convert this to an integer and you'll get 82. But let me explain what's happening here. So it's pretty simple actually. Student1 is being passed behind the scenes as argument for the self parameter. But what about student2 and student3? They are being passed as argument for the s2 parameter and s3 parameter. So basically, they are like self. So when you say self.testscore, you mean student1.testscore. Same goes for s2. Because s2 is equal to the object student2, you can say here student2.testscore. That's why I use s2.testScore. And s2 and s3 actually represents an object. So basically, you are saying object.testScore. In instance methods, we have two types of instance methods: accessor methods or getters and mutator methods or setters. Let us see what they mean. So I have two functions that I created earlier right now, and each one of them has a job to do. GetName returns the self.name and setName returns, or it doesn't return, it overrides the old self.name value to a new name. Okay? Simple. Now, what if I say student1 dot and I say getName? I need to actually put this inside a print statement. It will actually return for me the name, right? Let's see. It will return John because I used student1 and student1 is John. Now if I say student1 dot, and where is the set name? There it is. I'm going to name this student David. And I'm going to, let me just copy this one, and because I'm going to use another time. So let's see what will happen. So I'll get John and David. Now we all know why, but let me explain what's a getter and what's a setter. A getter is a simple method that fetches a value or data of an instance, while a setter method is a method that modifies a certain object, attribute, or instance variable. Now let us define this method. So here it's written this is a, and we need to continue it. So is this a getter or a setter method? Well, it is a getter method, and the other one is a setter method. So I hope that makes sense. Getters are methods that fetches value or data, while setters are actually methods, instance methods, that modifies the data. Now let us talk about class methods. Now let me create a class variable, and a class variable is simply a variable that's created outside the init method. So I'm going to say university. First of all, university, I'm writing it wrong. University equal to, let's say, Harvard. Now what categorizes class variables is that they are common for all objects. Changing the class variable for one object will modify all other objects or will affect all other objects. So let's see, or let's create a class method that will allow me to change universities. So I'm going to say def change uni. I'm going to say, will I say self or something else? Well, I will say CLS, which means class. Why? Let's see why later on. Now let me say new uni. And first of all, before we dive in, let us see why we need to use something special right here. I'm going to use a decorator called class method. And right now, I'm going to change the pass keyword. I'm going to say cls.university equal to new uni. So to create a class method, you are obliged to actually use the decorator at class method. Why? Because that tells Python and other developers that you are creating a class method. So when you work with objects, you use self. When you work with class, you use CLS or class. Okay, so simple as that. But how do we call a class method? Well, we can use the class itself. So I can say student dot, and I should change the uni first. Change uni. Let's say Stanford. Now I could say print, or let me use a class method, another class method. Let us create another class method that actually returns for me the uni value. So I'm going to say class method. I'm going to say def return uni, takes CLS or takes a class as parameter, and I'm going to say return cls.university. Simple as that. I'm going to print using an S string uni equal to, inside curly brackets, I'm going to say return, not return, student, the class, it's the class, return uni. Okay, let's see what will the output be. Will it be Harvard or Stanford? It will be Stanford because we changed the class or the class variable's value. So what's happening here? You're actually mentioning the class as an argument for the CLS parameter, and this is it. This is the class variable. It's simple, really simple. All you need to do, or all you need to know, is that you need to use this decorator that specifies that you're working with class methods. And now let's go with the last method, which is static methods. I'm going to delete the class methods and these two lines. Let us create a simple static method that will, well, let's see how to first create a static method. So to create one, I'm going to just simply say def, and I'm going to say print something. And this static method actually won't take any parameter. Static methods are simply methods where you don't want to work with objects, nor you want to work with classes, but you are putting this method inside a class. So simply, a static method is like a function, but inside a class. So how do we work with static methods? We need to first tell Python that we are using a static method. All you need to do is use a decorator called static methods, and right now you're working with a static method. What I'm going to do is say I'm going to print something really basic. This is a static method. I'm writing it wrong. Okay. This is a static method. Now to call a static method, you just need to use the class. So student.print something. I'm not putting it inside a print statement because it's already printing something. So print something, let's see, let us call it, run the file. This is a static method. So what can we understand from static method? Well, they are simply functions that are inside a class. This method is not working with any object and any class. And if you want to create a static method, you need to use this special decorator. And this is it on instance methods, class methods, and static methods. I really hope you enjoyed and learned something valuable. Make sure to subscribe and follow me in this Python object-oriented programming tutorial. Now, I invite you to watch one of these end screens that will appear right now, so I hope to see you in one of them.